Hi Year 12. In this first video, I am going to read aloud the exemplar response that I will annotate so that you're able to see how a reflection statement is structured and what you need to do in preparation for your reflection statement next week. Whilst you will be completing your reflection statement under exam conditions in class, you will of course need to be well prepared, knowing what it is you want to say about your own work and how you've been influenced by your prescribed text. In this first video, I'm going to read through the exemplar response, and in the second video, I will be doing the annotations on the reflection component of the response. This read through is to help you if you find reading another student's handwriting to be tricky, which is quite a common thing, and it just allows for the response to flow nicely for you. You're not stumbling over messy handwriting or words that you're not sure of. If you are confident and able to read the response without listening to me read it, by all means you can just skip this video and go to the second one where I do the annotations. Before you do that though, you might want to just listen into what I say here about the actual question. This was the 2019 HSC question for craft of writing. It's similar to what you have to do for your assessment task, hence it's a good one for us to look at. This required the students to write two components responding to this stimulus here. Now, the first part was like in your assessment task, create a piece of imaginative, discursive or persuasive writing that ends with the provided image. Now, of course, you don't need to begin or end with any of the stimulus you've been provided. You just need to take inspiration from them. This required the students to be more specific. So this is a good example of what might happen in your trial or your HSC. The second part is the reflection, and it says, explain how your study of the craft of writing has enabled you to create an engaging piece of writing. In your response, make detailed reference to your use of language in Part A. You'll notice that for this HSC question, it was not evenly weighted. There was a 12 and an 8 mark allocation. Your assessment task is evenly weighted with 10 marks for each. The good thing about the exemplar response that I'm about to read is that the reflection statement is very close to being 400 words. It's actually 391. And so it is the length that you're aiming for in your assessment task. The student who wrote this would have written that reflection statement at that length within a lot less than half an hour, because you only have 40 minutes to complete the entire section of the exam, this module. And the student would have spent, I'm assuming, more time on Part A, given that it is worth more marks. Now, that's not to say you should be able to do the same right now, because this was what the student was able to achieve at the end of their HSC study. And as you continue to prepare for your exams, you will hopefully increase the speed of your own handwriting and ability to respond under exam conditions. And the fact that you have to do 400 words for next week with half an hour having the question prior, it is a really achievable amount for you to do in that time frame. Okay, so I'm going to read the exemplar response now. Now, if you're not aware of that term, an exemplar response is one that is published by NESA as a really good example of a 20 out of 20 response. So this was written by a student and it was given full marks. It's not perfect because it's under exam conditions. It is a really good way for you to see that you can achieve really fantastic marks in English if you just tick all of the boxes, and that's what I'll be delving into in the second video with the annotations. Okay, so this student chose to write an imaginative piece, and the reflection statement, whilst the question does not specify using the prescribed texts, the student does in fact use the prescribed text that they studied in order to support their reflection statement, you have to refer to at least one prescribed text next week. And I think it's interesting that whilst the student didn't have to do that in the exam, the fact that they did allowed them to ground their reflection in that close study of the craft of writing, and it just gave a good, nice base and authenticity to what they were writing. All right, so this imaginative piece reads as such. There is this place my father used to take me. I remember driving with him in his old work van. Rusty tools rattled in the back. He used to drum on his steering wheel while he drove. My bed shakes a little and I'm instantly taken back. I hear a car honk and I'm there. It's one of those memories your brain begs you to relive. I'm scared of what might happen if I do what it wants and let go of reality. I give in and suddenly I'm back. The van bounces as we hit a pothole. I hear Dad swear. He hates the council. He turns to me and makes me promise not to tell Mum what he said. I promise. All is quiet. I'm happy. Then we pass an accident and I remember which memory this is, which time. I beg my brain to make it stop. I brace myself. Dad, I say quietly, what's a divorce? I cringe hearing myself say those words. I was so young. Dad tells me everything. When I tell him I learnt it from Mum, he has no choice but to tell me. I watch my little heart break all over again. I watch from the back seat as a tear rolls down the younger me's cheek. Then I feel a tear roll down mine. Dad pulls over and I realise I don't remember this part. He tells me a story. When he was young, he broke his arm. His father said to him, "Son, a man's tears are special. They're full of magic. But if a man cries too much, he runs out of magic. So, buddy, you shouldn't cry, or your magic leaves." I watch my father hug me. He starts up the car again and we drive. It's silent. It's the kind of silence that crushes your soul. The silence rings in my ears. We keep going until we are finally at the alley leading to the ice cream place. I watch as he puts me on his shoulders. I go to follow, but I hear a beep and my body is pulled back. I hear another beep and it jerks me back. I'm playing tug of war with the beeps, but I'm too weak. Suddenly I'm back. Darkness again, and voices. But there are more voices than normal. I hear a doctor say, "He is going to a better place." My mother cries. I hear beeps starting to fade. These ones are softer. I sink into the mattress of beeps. I wonder what he sees, my mother's voice catches in her throat. Fading. Everything fades. The last thing I hear is my father. He lets his magic out. My eyes open and I'm in the alley, leaving the ice cream places surrounded by colour. I see a face. It's new. It's my grandma. I remember this old picture of her. At the end of the alley, my dad's van waits for me. Okay, now, the reflection statement, as I said, it's the length that you're aiming for. The prescribed text this student did was a poem by Les Murray called An Absolutely Ordinary Rainbow. It's not one of the prescribed texts that we are doing, but it's a great example of how you can use the surfer or the dreamers in your reflection statement. Okay, so I'll read it through and then, as I said before, annotations will be in the second video. My imaginative story follows a young man in a coma, remembering a place his father took him to. The motif of crying in the story is inspired by the poem An Absolutely Ordinary Rainbow by Les Murray. The poem is about a man crying in the streets and is a commentary on the expectation of men in society not to cry. I use that commentary in a speech my character's father gives. In my story, however, the speech is positive and relays the message that a man's tears are special and should be cherished. The motif of crying in my story is inspired by the poem as well as the idea of contagious crying. Whereas my character's younger self cries, so does he. My story uses many metaphors such as I sink into the mattress of beeps. I also use lots of truncated sentences to allude to my character being a teenager, as it is a common theme in younger people's language to talk in shorter sentences. The idea of the ice cream shop is inspired by a real memory of mine from childhood. I chose to focus less on the direct conversation in the memory because I wanted to focus more on the lasting effects of memories. I use my language throughout to build up certain suspense so that the audience can build an idea of what will happen, but still get a satisfying payoff. This is best shown at the end of the second paragraph where I say, then we pass an accident, and I remember which memory this is, which time. I beg my brain to make it stop. I brace myself. The truncated sentences help build suspense. At times in the story, I talk about the world around the character. This builds a sense of wonder and beauty. This is something Murray did well in his poem. This is best shown when he talks about the people surrounding the man and touching him. The language I use helps build tension and a desire to know what happens. It also builds a sense of wonder in the world, as these are memories experienced by a man in a coma. The story ends with the boy passing away, and we discover that the alley is his passage to heaven. Heaven for him is the memories with his dad. Okay, that's the end of the reading. You can move on now to the second video.